I'm pretty sure I've put off making this video for this long purely because I didn't want to get entrenched in all of the crap and the drama that's going on with Ubisoft at the moment. There's a lot of stuff going down, and I'm going to break it down a little bit, but this video is mainly about Assassin's Creed Valhalla, which is what we're going to spend the majority of the time discussing, so just be aware. Just to deal with it up front, right now there's a big scandal going on within Ubisoft where, for one, they say that they're treating employees in a fairly sexist way. A lot of senior executives have gotten in trouble, some of them even fired and removed from the company due to their behavior. There's a ton of reporting that's been done on it. For me to repeat it here would just be repetitive, but just be aware that that's going on, and there's a lot of things being shaken up within Ubisoft as a result. But probably the most pertinent scandal that went on with regards to this video in Assassin's Creed Valhalla is that the game's creative director, Ashraf Ismail, somebody that I've spoken to in the past, somebody that directed Assassin's Creed Black Flag and Origins, two of my favorite games in the franchise, he was put on a leave of absence for a few weeks to a month and a half while they did an internal investigation. Basically, he stepped down from his position as creative director of the game. And after that internal investigation, it was just announced that Ubisoft fired him and he is no longer working at the company. Basically, what happened, it's not just that he was cheating on his wife with gamers and girls, and it wasn't just that he was lying about being married in order to get with these girls and to have affairs. The drama and the reason it's a concern and the reason that he was let go was because he was using his position as creative director on all of these Assassin's Creed games to get with those girls. He was apparently sharing confidential information about the development of the games, showing them footage, sneak peeks of the game, what was going to be shown off in later trailers. He was basically leaking all of this stuff to get in bed with girls, allegedly, and that is what caused him to be let go, which is much more understandable than just getting fired because you had an affair. I mean, think about it. If you are anybody on the development team and you happen to leak footage or gameplay information for any reason whatsoever, you're jeopardizing your entire career. You're jeopardizing your job. You're probably going to get fired if it gets out that that happens. That's why I am so careful not to reveal anything about my sources when they come to me telling me stuff about what's going on within the industry, because it can ruin their life, as Ismail is apparently being ruined right now. And yes, full transparency, if I were managing Ubisoft and I found out that one of my creative directors was leveraging his position in order to get with girls who were fans of the franchise that he was at the helm of, I would be upset and I would fire him. I would move on, find somebody else. There's a lot of capable developers who would do a great job and would kill to be in the creative director's chair. I mean, just think about it. Put some other developer in the same position. If Todd Howard, it came out, was showing off early footage of Elder Scrolls 6 to girls so that he could get with them and have affairs, like, yeah, that would be kind of a big deal. It would be slimy and just not okay. So while I think that Ash and his team have done a great job in years past with Assassin's Creed games, and I think they've made some of my favorite games in the entire franchise, I still understand the choice to let him go, move on, and just cut ties. I understand it. I would probably make the exact same decision. Okay, with all of that out of the way, let's talk about the game itself, because I think the game is what's being lost in a lot of these discussions. Yes, a creative director is doing scummy things, and a lot of executives over at Ubisoft are being scummy people, and they should be fired, they should be booted out. That doesn't mean that the game itself is going to be bad or that you shouldn't support all of the artists that have been working on this game for years simply due to the actions of a few bad eggs. It's one of the reasons I'm really opposed to boycotts of any kind, especially in an industry like this where there's a ton of work and people's blood, sweat, and tears going into it. If you boycott it due to the terrible actions of one individual, yeah, I guess you sort of are making a point, but you're also really screwing over the people that spent 3, 4, 5 years working on this project who had nothing to do with that, and if anything, were victims of the person you're trying to punish. You're punishing the victim to try and make some point to the abuser, and I think it just gets messy. That being said, I'm still really excited for Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I think there's a lot of good stuff buried within it. I do have some concerns that I'll address here in just a moment, but I overall I'm pretty excited. Oh yeah, and you see right there, that's my bearded dragon villain Trenton Mirth. He's trying to get out of his case. He probably needs to be held. I'll do that right after this. Now, Ubisoft was very generous, and they allowed me to play 4 hours of Assassin's Creed Valhalla early. They basically streamed it through this service called Parsec, so I actually got to sit here in this chair at this desk with this monitor, and I was playing the game in my home months and months early. It was really, really cool, and considering that it was streamed to me, it had a little bit of lag. There was some real degradation in terms of visual quality, but all told, it was a pretty cool experience. Now, like I said, I got 4 hours with the game pretty much nonstop. Every once in a while, one of the IT guys would step in and adjust some setting and then would come back in and we would reset. Now, I got to play as both male Ivor and female Ivor. As far as I could tell, there wasn't a huge difference in terms of vocal delivery or acting quality, but then again, this demo was not focused at all on the narrative or cutscenes. It was mostly gameplay. They were trying to flex the world building, the graphics, and then, of course, the boss fights, which is something you've probably heard of at this point. But with that being said, there was actually a fair number of funny and interesting mini side quests that I came across while just exploring this small portion of the map. It was really cool to see because a lot of the time these types of games tend to focus on quantity over quality, so to see so much attention to detail being put into a small side quest was pretty cool. For instance, right here, you can actually get in a rap battle with other people in the world. It's kind of a weird Viking throwdown, but it was pretty cool actually. Or going and engaging in a drinking game where you're trying to outdrink your competitor. It gets kind of difficult as a mini game, I'll be perfectly honest. You have to pace it correctly to make sure you're still drinking. And then as you get more and more drunk, you start to sway. So you have to balance Ivor out while drinking and maintaining that balance. It's actually pretty difficult, but I think it's fun. Now, the one thing with these types of preview events is that it's always really hard to get a feel for the tone of the game because they're showing you off something flashy or they're showing off the intro hours or two. It's always difficult to figure out what the game is actually going to be like based on this preview, which is why it's a preview and not an early copy. For instance, there's this one side quest that you can come across while exploring the world in the area we were given access to. And basically, it's a guy that is fishing with his son, and you start to talk to him, and he explains that he's frustrated that he wasn't able to die a hero's death. He's not going to get to go to Valhalla. He's basically stuck here, but his one wish is that his son gets to see him die like a warrior, like a hero, effectively. So, because it's an Assassin's Creed game, you offer to fight him and to help him fulfill this dream. He takes you up on it, and you start a mini boss fight in the middle of this small pond. It's actually a pretty cool set piece, and there's some weird lines thrown out over the course of the fight, but it's still kind of fun.
Son, do not look away! My end is near!
Now, I know it probably wasn't intended to be, but I actually found this to be sort of a funny side quest. Maybe it was intended to be funny that this guy is so weirdly suicidal out of the blue and is okay with this stranger killing him in front of his son. Maybe it's just a cultural difference. Maybe it's that I wasn't immersed in the world enough. But either way, it came off as kind of hilarious. But then other times, there's these boss fights with these demonic-looking crow women people who start to fight you, and they're casting spells and jumping 30 feet in the air. It pulls you out of any sort of immersion you might have had trying to get grounded in the world or think about it more historically, but nonetheless, it's an interesting boss fight and it's fun, but it's pretty dark. It's pretty gritty. And then you swap over to the fishmonger boss fight where he's just basically screaming, "Please kill me." It's a little jarring. Now, if I had any concerns whatsoever with Assassin's Creed Valhalla, this would probably be it. And that's that I've always wanted a really grounded Assassin's Creed game. I've said this for years and years after doing critiques for countless Assassin's Creed games. I want one that's really grounded. And my favorite games in the franchise, I feel, tend to be the ones that really try to stay realistic within the time period they were playing, or at least somewhat realistic so that you could get immersed within it. For instance, in Assassin's Creed Unity, there's nothing in there aside from the sort of sci-fi elements with Abstergo and the first race that really pulls you out of it. For the most part, it's all pretty grounded and they stick to the historical record fairly closely. It was one of the things that concerned me when I first heard that Assassin's Creed was going back to ancient Egypt and then they were going back to ancient Greece. It was that when you get farther and farther away from the clearly recorded historical record, Ubisoft and their writers, they said this openly, start to feel as though they can have a lot more wiggle room. They can do whatever they want because they're no longer constrained by this very strict timeline as to how things had to happen. If you go back and you play Assassin's Creed 3 set within the Revolutionary War, there's a lot of stuff going on there where they had to fit the story of Assassin's Creed around the historical narrative. And that's what I personally really, really like. But when you go all the way back to ancient Greece and everything's just open and wide for everybody to throw whatever they want to within the story, it gives the writers a lot more freedom, but it also removes a lot of that punch of historical grounded timelines. But I do understand that this is purely subjective, and just because I like things more historically grounded doesn't mean that you have to like it that way. But nonetheless, I would be interested in hearing what you think of more grounded plot lines within Assassin's Creed compared to what they're doing now. I don't know. I want to hear. Let me know in the comments. Or hop over to the Discord. I'll have it linked in the description box below. We're doing a giveaway for Cyberpunk 2077. It's going to be awesome. Whatever platform you want, all you have to do is join the Discord. So hop over there, join. You're entered. It's super easy. So this is the main fear when it comes to Valhalla, that it's not very cohesive. Everything kind of fights itself. On the one hand, it's a goofy sort of sci-fi RPG, and then on the other side, it's trying to be a dark and gritty Witcher clone, but then all at the same time, it's trying to fit within the umbrella of Assassin's Creed, which at this point doesn't mean much of anything. But to be completely honest, even after 4 hours with the game, according to their estimations, that could be as much as 10% of the total campaign time, I still feel as though I can't make a clear judgment on what this game is trying to be and what it's going to feel like to get your hands on it and play through from beginning to end. I really do sincerely hope that when we all sit down on launch day, plop it into our respective consoles or boot it up on our PC, that we get a cohesive and coherent style, form, and feel of the game, because after 4 hours, I really am not sure what this game is trying to be. There are a lot of moments where it feels like The Witcher 3, but with a slightly brighter color palette, some better animations, and less focus on interesting plot lines, and then other times it feels as though it's just Assassin's Creed Odyssey with a fresh coat of paint. Probably my biggest frustration is that the combat still feels very much like it did in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, even though Ashraf and his team said that they put a lot of effort and work into making the combat feel really weighty and heavy in the same way that you would expect it to be for a Viking. I didn't notice much of any work. It looks as though it's Assassin's Creed Odyssey's systems with some fresh abilities thrown on top of it. And it's a little frustrating for me because I was really hoping that this would be a dark, gritty, grounded, heavy, weighty game. And it just doesn't seem like it's going to be that way. Movement is still very light and frilly. You don't really struggle with much of anything. You can cancel out any animation within the combat system by quick dodging and rolling. Any of the abilities that you have basically will immediately pull you out of any sort of immersion you might have been caught up in, because many of them use abilities that are far from human. It's a little frustrating for me because it didn't match what I was hoping for. I was hoping this would be a return to form, but it seems like it's more of the same. I really enjoyed Assassin's Creed Odyssey when I first played through it all. After playing through all of the DLC, however, I was pretty well and truly fed up, as I said in my critique for Fate of Atlantis, but all told, I thought it was fairly solid. And as for Assassin's Creed Origins, I loved every single second of that game. And the DLC, I thought it was phenomenal. But when it comes to Valhalla, I haven't seen the one thing that really pulls me in. It gets me super excited. I just haven't seen it yet. And I'm hoping I see it. I hope that we find it. And I hope that when we boot it up on launch day, it's clear and present. But as of right now, it's just not. But I don't mean to be overly pessimistic. I'm just trying to be honest and upfront. After all, spending 4 hours with a demo effectively gives you a lot of time to figure out what you're going to nitpick, what you're going to throw out, what you're going to criticize, because at the end of the day, that's kind of what you're there to do. And in fact, the developers were actively asking us questions while we were playing in order to get our feedback and figure out what they should fix, what they should do. For instance, for me, I had somebody that was sitting on Discord chat with me the entire 4 hours that I played. And as I went through, if I noticed something felt a little weird, or if I thought I noticed a bug or a glitch or something that just seemed strange, I would tell her, and then she took down notes. And in one case, there was something weird going on. She called over the IT guy, the head of IT for Assassin's Creed Valhalla. He walked over to her desk and they fixed it right then and there. Like, they do care, and for many points and reasons, we were playing the game to help them out in addition to promote the game. So I don't mean to be overly pessimistic and critical. I think that's part of why we were there. But even with all of that said, I'm still excited for the game because there is a lot that's intriguing here. Whether we look at the setting, which for me is a huge perk, I love the Nordic setting and I think it's going to be really solid, or if we look at the graphics, the animation quality, or how much they've shaken up the side gameplay elements and mechanics. For instance, there's fishing now, there's the rap battles we referenced earlier, there's the drinking game we referenced earlier. There's all sorts of things that they're throwing in here to try and shake up the gameplay loop so that it's not just ride here on your horse, hop off, stealth kill a few people, and then go and kill this other person, and then go and wipe out this horde of people, and then move on, and then we're going to have a siege where you're going to kill a lot more people, then you move on and do it all over again. They're trying to shake it up, and I'm very excited for that, and I encourage it fully. But the reality is, over the course of this 4-hour demo, I didn't get a good feel for what that's going to actually be like. Because most likely, most of that stuff is going to come into play during the main quest. And this demo was not oriented around that main quest. We got to participate in 2 or 3 main quest missions, but there wasn't much to be said. In other words, you could really tell they had selected those missions for us to play through because they basically told us nothing about the main story. And lastly, I feel like I should address this. A lot of people on Discord and Twitter and Instagram have been asking me. I cannot upload the full 4 hours of footage. I checked with them. I've read all the fine print. I would love to upload the full 4 hours, but the way that we captured it, the way that we played it, there's a lot of things interspersed that we're not allowed to show and that we're embargoed against showing until after the game launch. So there's probably 20-30 minutes of stuff I would love to talk about and love to share, but I just can't until much later on whenever the game happens to be in your hands. So yeah, all told, I'm really excited. I think there's a lot of good stuff here, but there's also a fair amount that's concerning and that isn't as different as I was hoping. Hopefully it just means that they're kind of reserving all of their assets and resources and they're pouring all of that into the Assassin's Creed game that's going to come for next generation consoles, hopefully in 2022, if they take 2021 off, which it looks like they probably will. But we're just gonna have to wait and see what plays out, how the cookie crumbles. I'm pretty excited nonetheless. But that's all for me. Let me know what you think of Assassin's Creed Odyssey. I'm pretty pumped and excited. I've got my Ubisoft hoodie because even with all the crap going on, I still think there's some phenomenal developers over there. A lot of them I've actually met and know. It's a lot of phenomenal artists and I want to support them as best I can. Even if there's some bad apples at the top of the tree, I think we should still appreciate and cherish the good apples that are a little lower on the tree. That's all for me. Thank you for watching. I love you very much, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.